Hello, esteemed students. This is Monarch Atlantic University, USA Online Learning. You are welcome to our e-learning classroom. Before us here today is a course titled Theories and Issues in Psychology, with the course code TIP 409 for the bachelor's and 709 for the master's. Sitting before you is your teacher, Dr. Delphine Onwura. By the end of today's lesson, students are expected to clearly define the concept of psychology, identify and explain the goals of psychology, identify the various methods of collecting information for research purposes in psychology, and identify the theories in psychology. So, without wasting our time, let's get down to the description of our psychology. What is psychology? Psychology is derived from the roots psych, is a Greek word. Psych, P-S-Y-C-H-E, psych, is a Greek word meaning soul or mind. And another word, ology, O-L-O-G-Y, ology, meaning scientific study of. So put together, psychology is the scientific study of mind and behavior. In other words, psychology is the science that studies behavior and what goes on in the mind that causes behavior to occur. Psychologists generally study human behavior to understand why people behave the way they do. They gather information about a subject. By carefully analyzing this information, they reach a conclusion. So what am I trying to say here? That psychologists, they gather information about a particular behavior. They analyze the information they gather about that behavior and reach to a conclusion that behavior is this and behavior is that. And these factors causes this behavior to occur. So that's it. So it is important to note that psychology has to do with a lot of concepts that leads to behavior. Concepts like learning, perception, memory, motivation, personality traits. All these concepts lead to behavior. And what is this behavior we are talking about? Behavior in this concept, could mean anything we do. It could be sneezing, it could be laughing, it could be crying, it could be sleeping, all the observable and the non-observable human activities like feelings, thoughts. Your feelings, they are all categorized as behavior. Yes. So, having known what psychology is, let's get to know the goals of psychology. The goals of psychology. The psychologists actually have four major goals, the venture one. And these goals are to describe behavior. And the second one is to explain behavior. And the third one is to predict behavior. And the fourth one is to change behavior. Now, how these four major goals of psychology, what actually are they trying to let us know here by setting these four goals? One, describing behavior is they tend to objectively describe the behavior of the individual. And the second one, to explain behavior, they tend to develop an understanding of the causes and consequences of that behavior using explanations which are based upon the best available evidence and creative imaginations. Now, to predict behavior, they tend to predict accurately if, when, how, what form from a given situation is this behavior likely to reoccur. And to change behavior, they tend to demonstrate that it's actually possible to control a given behavioral response by making it stop, or vary in some predictable ways. So now, let's get to explain this goals of psychology with an example. So let's take, for example, you're dealing with children, and you came in and you met these children and they are crying. And you as a psychologist, you came across these children that are crying. You actually want to prove something. You want to know what exactly that is happening in that scenario. So your questions might come in this way. You ask, what are they doing? Now you're trying to describe their behavior. You ask the question, what are they doing? And by getting the answer, they are crying. You've actually described their behavior at that very moment. They are crying. That's what they are doing. So you've actually described their behavior. And the second one is to explain behavior. You wanted to know, the motivation behind that behavior. You want to know what actually is the cause of their crying. Why were they crying? You ask the question, why were they crying? And you get the answer. They are crying. Let's say they were watching their favorite cartoon and they were asked to go and sleep. And they started crying. Or some of them, they are hungry and they weren't given any food to eat. And they started crying. Or maybe someone shouted at them and they started crying. A lot of things can actually make children cry. So, but in this context, let's take the example of they are watching their favorite cartoon and they were asked to go and sleep. So now you want to predict, accurately, when are these children likely to cry again? You see? So now they were asked to go and sleep while they were watching their favorite cartoon and they started crying. So now you can actually see it that the next time, if these children are watching their cartoon and you come and tune off the television, they're certainly going to cry. Or if they are hungry, you refuse to give them food. Or if the children were given food to eat and you came and take away the food, they're certainly going to cry. So by so doing, you can see that you as a psychologist, you can actually predict that when negative actions, when these children are exposed to negative actions, they are likely to cry. So you can predict it that if negative actions, if the children are exposed to negative actions, that they are likely to cry. That's it. And now you wanted to change this abnormal behavior of the children crying. You want to change it. So what do you do here? So by changing that abnormal behavior of the children, so you can actually, hey, children, come over here. Let's have an agreement here. From this time to this time, you're going to do the dishes. And from this time to this time, you're going to, you have to sleep. And when you wake up, you have to read your books. And from this time to this time, you are allowed to watch cartoon. So by so doing, you've actually controlled that abnormal behavior. That's crying. It's an abnormal behavior. You've actually controlled that behavior. You've influenced, that behavioral response. Yeah. So the children have, they've actually, get what you are trying to do here, that they are not supposed to watch cartoon when they're supposed to be reading their books. And you actually know that you are not supposed to ask these children to go and sleep when it is time for them to watch cartoon. So that's it. So what are we trying to say here? That in conclusions, to describe behavior answers the questions of what? To explain behavior answers the questions of why. And to predict behavior answers the questions of why, when, and how. Is it likely to happen again? And then, in conclusions here, we can conclude that describing behavior is a benchmark that helps psychologists to understand the motivation behind behaviors and gauge what is normal and abnormal when it comes to behavior. And now to explain behavior, it helps psychologists to understand why people do the things they do, what factors actually contribute to such behavior. And now to predict our behavior, once psychologists understand what happens and why, then they can formulate predictions about when, why, and how it might happen again. So predicting behavior is also one of the best way to know if we understand the underlying causes of our actions. Now, changing behavior. Ah, Psychologists strive to change, influence, and control behavior to make constructive, lasting changes in people's life. So, it is important to note that changing behavior is a major focus of the psychologists. Yes, that's their major focus, and that's what they tend, to achieve here. So, by way of concluding these goals of psychologists, one can say that psychologists start by, observing human behavior and then describing the behavior, the problems, okay? And by understanding what is happening, they work on learning more about why the behavior happens and even how to change it if it's an abnormal behavior, of course. So they tend to change it if it's abnormal. That's it. So the next thing is to look into the methods through which these psychologists gather their information. Yes, like we said earlier, that they gather information about a subject, and by carefully analyzing the information, they reach to conclusions. So we can say that psychology being defined as a study of the mind and mental processes and behavior. It is a scientific study, and it is so because psychologists also do a very systematic research, and experiment to study and formulate psychological theories like other scientists do. So, for psychologists, to carry out their informations, to gather their informations, there are various methods that they need to, venture on to be able to gather the information that they will be analyzing that, leads them to the conclusion that behavior is this and behavior is that. So one of these methods, there are lots of them. I'm going to outline them and maybe speak on one or two, three of them. So one of those is experimental methods, and another one is observational method, questionnaire, case study research, correlational research, content analysis, survey research method, and psychological testing. So now, looking at these methods, let's go by the first one, the experimental methods. As the name implies, experiments. We already know that experiments has to be conducted here. So experiments are performed on humans and on animals, as the case may be, depending on what the psychologist is working on. Yeah, so experiment allows a psychologist to identify causes and effects to the extent that there will be no ambiguity about what caused what. Yes, so by carrying out the experiment on a given subject or behavior, could be anything. So carrying out experiments, it helps the psychologist, to actually know what caused what, So it is the most reliable of all methods of collecting information. It's precise and systematic in its approach. Their findings have limited application because of the small number of people involved. And the next one I'm going to talk on is the next one I'm going to speak on is a questionnaire. Questionnaire is a short method of gaining information on a specific problem in a brief interval of time. Much information can be gathered through this questionnaire, by the means of a written questionnaire presented to the subject. And through this method, a very large sample of subjects can be covered. And this type of method is widely used in educational psychology. So it is important also for us to note that there are two types of our questionnaire. We have structured questionnaire and unstructured questionnaire. Structured questionnaire, it contains questions with alternative answers, yes, to them. For example, we want to carry out investigation if Mrs. Pamela is a mother. Now, in structured questionnaire, the question could come in form, it can come this way. Mrs. Pamela is a mother. A, agree. 2, disagree. 3, undecisive. So it's either you say agree, Mrs. Pamela is a mother, or you disagree that she's not a mother, or you are undecisive. I wonder how you're going to do that. So this type of structured questionnaire, a lot of investigators, they actually prefer this because their answers are readily available for analysis, very easy to conduct. So, and the unstructured questionnaire, it has the advantage of giving the respondent the freedom of revealing his opinions and attributes. Okay, it allows the respondent to reveal his own opinions and attitude in the said question. So let's say, for example, Mrs. Pamela is a mother. If yes, why? If no, why? So the respondent can say Mrs. Pamela is a mother. Yes. Then why? Yeah, Mrs. Pamela is a mother. She's married to Mr. Charles, and one time I saw her with a protruding stomach. She was pregnant, and the last year she gave birth to a baby boy, and this year she gave birth to a baby girl. She has 2 kids. She's living with her husband and her kids. Mrs. Pamela is a mother. You see? So, in this type of questionnaire, investigators, they don't really, like this type. They prefer these structures because they believe that information they generate is difficult to process, and the analysis too. So most investigators, they avoid this type and prefer structural type. So, and the next thing we are going to look into is survey method, of collecting information. So in conducting survey, it's conducted in persons or through mail that inquire into the ways a group of people thinks or acts. And the population to be surveyed must be identified. So a statistical method must be used to pick a random representative sample of that population that is being surveyed. So now, the next one we're going to look into is the correlational. Yes, as a research, as a method of collecting information. Now, to see if 2 variables are associated or related in some way, psychologists use a statistical technique known as correlation. A lot of mathematics are involved here, yeah. So, a lot of, it's complex, So, but the idea is simple. It measures 2 variables like height and weight and see if they are related. And the next one is a psychological test. Psychological testing, is used to measure, abilities, interest, and achievements. So, having known the goals, of the psychologist and the methods of collecting information that enables them to achieve these goals, the goals, when they gather this information, carefully analyze the information they gather, they get to a conclusion. And this conclusion, this, how do I put it, the outcome of their analysis is what they use to formulate theories. So now, the next thing in line is theories and psychologists. So what is a theory in psychology? A psychological theory is an evidence-based idea that explains human emotions, thoughts and behaviors. And there are 5 major theories of psychologists that we're going to be looking into. I'm going to mention these theories of psychologists. One of such theories is cognitive theories. We have biological theories, we have humanistic theories, we have behavioral theories, and we have psychodynamic theories. These theories, they have different propositions, they have different perspectives. They solve behavior in different ways. One of the theories asserts that individuals learn behavior through interaction with their environment, while the other theory opines that human behavior begins with a person's thoughts, while another contains that humans are naturally good and need maybe a little bit of motivation to reach their full potentials, while the other theory proposed that how humans perceive themselves affects behavior. So, in your assignments, you're going to be you're going to study these theories and explain how these individual theories explains human behavior. So, having known what psychology is all about, the goals of psychologists, the methods of collecting information in psychology, and having known the different theories of psychologists, I believe that we've actually done justice, in today's lesson. So, I will be stopping here today till we meet again in this class. Signing out is still your teacher, Dr. Delphine Onwura. Bye. God bless you.